Nothing in this podcast or on our website should be construed as medical advice. Consult your healthcare provider for your individual nutritional and medical needs. The information presented is based on our research and is strictly that of the author and not necessarily those of any professional group or other individual.
Hi, I'm Sue Becker from Bread Beckers. Welcome to Sue's Healthy Minutes. I'm so excited you've joined me today, and I hope this episode encourages you and allows you to find the answers you have been praying for the health of you and your family. Today on Sue's Healthy Minutes, it is my very great pleasure to have as my guest Madeline Lauf. We are all searching for better health for ourselves and our children. Today, more and more awareness is coming forth that the root cause of many chronic health issues begin in the gut. And as my guest today will help us understand, our gut health actually begins at birth. From immunity to mood, metabolism to skin, our gut plays a far more significant role in our overall wellness than we once thought. And our children are no exception. My guest today is Madeline Loft, the owner and founder of Begin Health, a company focused on gut health, particularly in newborns and toddlers. Madeline, welcome to Sue's Healthy Minutes. Thank you so much for joining me. It is a pleasure to be talking to you.
Thank you, Sue. I am so honored to be here and excited to chat all things gut microbiome at the most important age, which is the early beginning of our kids' lives.
Yes, absolutely. I agree completely. And before we dive into the science, which I love, behind what you do, please share just a little bit about yourself and what led you on this journey of gut health for newborns and toddlers and to start a company such as Begin Health.
Yeah, Sue, I grew up in the Midwest in a rural small town. And it was one of those things where growing up in the Midwest, like you look around yourselves. And over the course of my life, I realized that, if you look around, we are all unwell. It is not okay that 60% of Americans are on prescription medication, that we are overweight, that the kids are overweight.
Yeah.
And we are unhealthy as a nation. And I myself had experienced, this challenge where I had digestive health issues my entire life. And I didn't even know about it, that it wasn't supposed to be this way until I was about 25 years old, when I personally was put on prescription medication for my digestive health issues. And so I started looking into this. I'm like, look, I'm 25. I work out. I try to eat well. Why? What is wrong? And that was when I really understood that there was this whole world inside of us, which is the gut microbiome, that powers so much of our overall health. And if I could wire and write the code basically to rewrite the code in my own gut microbiome, then I could have overall better health. And so I looked into this. I was able to heal myself. And I realized that actually we should be doing this at a massive scale. And not only is gut microbiome healing so important for us as adults, but actually the science, when you start reading the research, is that the greatest opportunity for impact is actually the first 8 years of life. And so that was what really led me down to starting a kids' health brand, was that if we wanted to impact the overall health of our nation, which I believe, by the way, is what makes us competitive on the world stage, is that we needed to start with kids. And that is why I started Begin Health as a platform to help babies and kids begin their lives in the most healthful way possible, which was building, feeding, and supporting the development of the gut microbiome.
That is absolutely amazing. I am just so in love with this, your philosophy and where God has taken you. So, for years, I've been teaching on gut health long before it was trendy. I have a degree in food science with a focus on microbiology. And so for more than 35 years now, I've been saying, fermented foods, gut health, probiotics. And so I want to dive into the science because that's the part I love so much. And just so my listeners don't have to take my word for it, I want you to explain what the term gut microbiome actually means and why is it so important?
Yes, for sure. And I think, the thing that's really interesting about what we call the microbiome, right? It's this collection of these organisms or bacteria, viruses, fungi, that they all work together in concert with each other and ourselves. And we essentially co-evolved with, I'm going to call them these bugs throughout human evolution. And we worked, it's almost like a symbiotic relationship. Like they need us, but we need them. And what's happening right now is that through time, like we've always worked really well together. And again, they're these organisms that help support our health. They help us with breaking down food. They help us with vitamin production. Like they have so many really great things. They help train our immune system.
Yeah.
And what's happening is that modern life, we've diverted away from the way that we traditionally lived in harmony with these microorganisms. And now today in modern life, we are not feeding and supporting these bugs that live within us, that we depend on to live. And therefore, they are basically like, I don't even want to be so dramatic, but they're going extinct within us.
No, I think that's a great way to put it. That's amazing. Yes.
And so we have to do everything we can to support this essentially species within us so that they can keep powering us. And
Yes.
that is what we need to focus on as modern day world that we're living in, is how can we support these microbes? And back to the microbiome, we have microbiomes in different areas of our bodies, right? Yes, the gut microbiome, to me, of course, like, maybe a little biased, I believe is the source of it all. But we have skin microbiome, we have oral microbiome, vaginal microbiome. So these are all of these collection of these different bacteria and viruses, and like I said, that are considered the microbiome, but they live in different parts of our bodies, and they all have their own unique characteristics.
Yeah, I think that is so important for people to understand. I get dismayed when I hear people lump yeast organisms all together as bad. There's good yeast and there's pathogenic yeast, or there's sometimes it's not really even that pathogenic, but it gets out of balance. So I just love the way you put that. They are symbiotic. They're doing us a great service. I call it the army within.
Yes, we do.
They're fighting for us.
They are. They truly are.
Yeah. So, we hear a lot today in more holistic health circles, the gut-brain connection. Can you explain that a little bit? I understand it, but maybe explain it a little differently than I would.
Sure. So, more and more research is coming out that we know that the gut and the brain are more intertwined than we maybe perhaps knew before. And what we're finding out is that actually there's more connections from our gut to our brain than even the brain down, which is like totally mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And so it's really cool though, because, a lot of times when it comes to those neurotransmitters or what have you, a lot of people are, we talk a lot in our society about, for example, mental health. Well, mental health, again, that might be something where there's different connections happening in the brain and down, but actually, if potentially you could shift your gut microbiome, that might actually help with the production of how you feel overall with your mood. And so they're learning more and more about all of this, that they are really truly intertwined. So for example, stress, if you are experiencing a lot of stress, that could actually be negative for your gut bugs, because your gut bugs are under essentially this the stress, and that it could actually impact if they'll die off actually. And so that's that gut brain connection again. If you're able to support and make your gut bugs stronger, that it can actually help you maybe reduce your stress levels. So and help you handle incoming, things in an easier way. Yeah. So that gut brain connection is so important, and nourishing our gut can help with overall clarity of, mind and body.
Yeah. That is powerful. And I think emotions really do trigger our digestive system, our gut, and sometimes we don't really think of it affecting those organisms. They're living organisms, and they do so much more than just help digest our food. They produce those great neurotransmitters, those chemicals that the brain needs, serotonin, dopamine, and others, and as well as B vitamins, which are so essential for our nervous system and our brain health and anxiety and depression and all of those things. So we hear the word gut dysbiosis. What are some of the causes, do you think, and can it be corrected?
Yes. So gut dysbiosis is one of those where we were talking about balance, right? We want to live in harmony with these bacteria, these bugs that live within us. And that means that we want the positive gut microbiome to the positive bacteria to really be proliferated so that they can work hard on our behalf. When the gut is in dysbiosis, it's out of harmony. There might be more of the negative, maybe pathogenic bacteria than the positive good. We mentioned like the workers or the soldiers on our behalf. And so it's out of balance. And right now what's happening is that there are so many triggers, whether they're environmental, they're food related, that are creating this dysbiosis, this out of sync. And some of those, for example, a lot of processed foods. If you're eating a lot of processed foods, you can be essentially feeding the bad bugs more than the good bugs. Yeah. And so then they're out of balance. When you are taking, there's a lot of over prescription of medications like antibiotics that can really wipe out all of the bugs. And then if you don't feed the good gut bugs, then the bad bugs will grow and take over. And so I'm very, always chatting about the overconsumption of antibiotics, because we have to be very careful. Antibiotics can be life-saving, but we want to be only using them when you truly need them. Other opportunities that you might be impacting, the dysbiosis, we talked about stress earlier. And actually, I wanted to expand on that. A lot of times when we talk with pediatricians or pediatric gastroenterologists, and we hear that kids are experiencing gastro issues, what is actually happening is that some of them are actually experiencing some emotional dysregulation at home. And so it's actually causing digestive health issues that are presenting in constipation or diarrhea, but they're actually beginning as emotional triggers. And so really keeping that mind at bay and that emotions at bay can help with, keeping that gut in harmony.
Yeah. That is, it's so critical. That really is. And then there's on the one hand, we've become a little bit germophobic. We use antibacterial soaps and hand sanitizers and sanitizing in the home. And it's really concerning, especially because you mentioned earlier, we have good organisms on our skin, different places in our body. And so the heavy use of antibiotics, people may say, well, I haven't had to take antibiotics, but are you using sanitizers and antibacterial cleansers and soaps and things like that? And I think, and transdermal absorption is huge. And I don't think we always, realize that.
Yes, exactly. And, while we're talking about it, Sue, let's just talk a little bit more about where are all the other triggers or channels where you could have dysbiosis, and we could talk about the positives of how we grow the good ones. But when it comes to dysbiosis, there are a couple in the early child development. One of the key areas that starts off was the mode of birth. So if a baby was born via C-section versus vaginally, we know from the studies that they are at higher risk for having dysbiosis because they were not seeded with the positive gut microbes coming through the vaginal canal. So that's one area. Another area is whether a baby is breastfeeding or formula feeding. That's another area where there could be a disbalance because now the baby is not getting the seeded gut microbes through transmission through breast milk. And so you have to be careful there. Then you get into some of the, starting to get the food eating times. If you're not feeding the good gut bugs through nutrition, so through the fruits and vegetables, then the bugs are not getting fed. And so they're not growing and they're not, able to stay strong and steady.
Right. Yeah.
So these are all areas, apart from what we mentioned earlier, that could be potentially a dysbiosis. And therefore, we need to get it back into balance or work harder to do that. And that's what we can chat about here today.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one thing. I was so excited to find your product, the Begin Baby and then the Growing Up prebiotics, because I don't know statistics, but C-sections are becoming more and more common.
A third of all births.
Wow. And I want to say right up front, moms, we're not putting a guilt trip on anybody. Sometimes these are life-saving, both to baby and to mom. But this to me is exciting because if your baby's a higher risk of not getting these intestinal organisms seeded, like you were saying, through a vaginal delivery, this is help. This is hope. This is a way to get that re-inoculation to take place. So I'm just really excited. So let's talk a little bit about the specific products. So your Begin Baby, it's a probiotic for 0 to 12 months old, right?
Yes, that's right. So yes, we will talk about that. And we'll briefly just mention, some people may still be wondering the difference between prebiotics and probiotics.
Right. Yes.
Maybe we can just chat about that for a minute, is that the probiotics are the living bacteria. Those are the bacteria that we discussed. They're the positive bacteria. Their bifidobacteria is one of the leading positive living bacterias. Prebiotics are the food for the living bacteria. So they are not alive themselves. So the food is the prebiotics, the probiotics are the living bacteria.
Yeah.
And important because one of them feeds the other one. And so when we built Begin Baby, which is pre and pro, we found an opportunity to help especially the formula feeding kiddos that were not receiving the really important human milk oligosaccharides and potentially at risk for not having the good bifidobacteria. And so we built a product that can help both seed and feed, is what the way I say it.
That's a good way to say it.
Feed, they really work symbiotically. We know that Bifidobacteria infantis is a really great bifidobacteria, is the one that you want the baby's gut microbiome to be predominated by, plus the human milk oligosaccharides. So this is the exciting part here. Human milk oligosaccharides are the third most abundant component of human breast milk by volume. And so what does that mean? It means that they are sugars that are created in breast milk that help support the underlying bacteria in the gut. And they have so many different functions, but that is one of them. And a breast milk is actually comprised of there's hundreds of them. But through fermentation and new innovations in science breakthroughs, we can now create these human milk oligosaccharides that mimic the exact molecular structure of breast milk, and we can now make them so that babies can benefit from these HMOs even if they are not able to breastfeed. And that is what's so cool, because they have the potential to really feed the good gut microbes, the bifidobacteria, and support what the baby would otherwise have been getting through breast milk.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So it's not your formula, your Begin Baby doesn't have human breast milk in it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And that's what sometimes a lot of families, I think they did a disservice naming them human milk oligosaccharides, because it was like, how do you collect these? They are not from humans, but they are brilliant in that they mimic the exact molecular structure as the HMOs in humans.
That's amazing.
And so that's a really cool combination. So Begin Baby is really meant for to be really a bridge between breastfeeding and formula feeding for the kiddos that really aren't getting those HMOs or the bifidobacterias. However, some of the babies that are fully breastfed, if they're maybe still struggling with softer stooling or needing softer stooling, wanting that extra digestive benefit, you can still have Begin Baby. You know, the HMOs are truly just helpful for building the good gut bugs and feeding them. And there's really no harm, if you will.
Right. That is great. That is so amazing. And your products say they contain milk, but so can a child with a milk allergy still take this? Of course, a newborn, you don't know that yet, but when they start getting older, I know that's a real concern with a lot of parents.
Yes. So, you know, we always want to be open and honest. Like, hey, look, some people are really just have an aversion to milk. That's, you know, they really just, even when it says that, you know, they want to be careful. We always say this is because actually the starting ingredient to creating the human milk oligosaccharides is lactose, but in the process, the lactose is eaten up. You know a lot about fermentations.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So it's essentially eaten up in that process that there really isn't much left over. But we want to say that, hey, look, the starting ingredient for this is lactose. There could be a residual amount. From everything that we've studied and looked at, the amount is so small that it's well below any level that would create any kind of allergic reaction. But again, if your child is truly, you know, anaphylactic or what have you, this is something that you would want to talk about with your doctor and look at, you know, weigh your options. But really, for a standard lactose or cow milk protein allergy, this level is so well below that we have many, many kids that have had either a lactose intolerance or a cow milk protein allergy and still be able to benefit from the human milk oligosaccharides in both our baby and kid product. So, you know, that's one thing. It's a decision that a family can make with their doctor. Mm-hmm. But from what we know, there really isn't any real risk.
Yeah. That's great to know. So, all right. So what are the health benefits of Begin Baby? What might a mom see in her baby if she starts the baby on the Begin Baby probiotics?
Yeah. So, you know, everything at Begin Health, we really like to use well-studied ingredients, right? And so this combination, the ingredients have been very well studied to support the development and growth of the bifidobacteria, that is the positive good gut bugs.
Yeah.
That helps with immune health, digestive health, and helping with healthy stool formation. There could be some potential benefits for allergy management. We've had some families that have kiddos that have eczema, that this has helped support that atopic eczema, I guess, lowering the incidence of that.
Yeah.
We had some kiddos just help with their overall immune. The studies demonstrate that actually it lowers the risk for viral and bacterial infections. So there's a lot of immune boosting benefits and a lot of digestive health benefits here, and just supporting that early development of the gut. But at the end of the day, I would say what are the benefits is seeding and feeding the good gut microbes.
Yes, and getting that foundation.
Yes.
And I think, you know, it's not just about the baby's health today, it's seeding it and feeding it for their future health. I mean, from behavior to learning to mood to sleep to all these things. The studies I've read, it's so important, those good gut organisms.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why we were having so many families come to us, and pediatricians, actually, they're like, how do we help our babies? And we were like, well, we came out with a kid product. And so that was why we really developed Begin Baby.
Yeah.
And you know, it's been such a hit ever since we did, because so many families are starting to understand the power of gut microbiome development from the beginning.
Yeah.
And And that's what Begin Baby does.
That is so important. Now, I noticed that your Begin Baby, it says specifically that it's for newborns, but specifies for full-term babies. Why is that? Why not a preemie? I would think they really, really need it.
This is such a big hot topic within the pediatric community. Because you're absolutely right that the preemie babies really need the positive gut microbes. Unfortunately, there were some incidents that led the academies and some of these governing bodies to be more critical of these feeding babies, preemies specifically, these, I would say, probiotics.
Yeah.
And so from a regulatory standpoint and just a safety standpoint, the governing bodies have really moved away from recommending pre and probiotics to preemies. So that's just one of those unfortunate things that had happened. And so we're just very careful that for anyone who's going to use Begin Baby, of course, like contact your healthcare practitioner. It's a decision between you and your doctor. We will say, like, as far as like when can a preemie, I would say probably at some point further down their development, once their immune system has been more fully developed, that this would be, it's not like they can never take it, right?
Right.
But maybe it can be further down the development path versus, during the actual preemie period.
Right. When things are a little more developed, full-term development, would it be maybe a weight thing that they're looking at when the baby achieves a certain weight, or it just depends?
It probably just depends on the state of their immune system. And, you want the baby to be able to withstand more.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, so the Begin Baby is a powder. So how would you give that to a newborn, especially if mom's breastfeeding? So how would you do that?
If mom is breastfeeding, we just say go ahead and if they're able to just pump a little bit, about 4 ounces worth into a bottle, then you can add the powder to the expressed breast milk.
Okay. And then if you're not breastfeeding, you can just add it to the formula.
Yeah. Correct. Yep.
Yeah, that is great. I'm just so excited that I found this. And now once the baby is 1 year old, do they stop taking the Begin Baby and then begin supplementing with the Growing Up prebiotics instead, or do they keep doing both?
It's one of those things. It depends on if you feel that your kiddo is able to start getting more of they're expanding how they're eating and they're eating well. You can just move to Growing Up prebiotics, and we can talk about that transition. Begin Baby was really meant to support that bridge if your kiddo was not getting those HMOs or maybe the positive gut microbes if you were fully formula feeding. However, at age 1, most kiddos transition away from either formula, or if you're still breastfeeding, more power to you. That's amazing. Keep going. I, by the way, am a number one supporter for breastfeeding. We know from the gut microbiome perspective, that's the lens that we're looking at. The best thing you can do to support your baby's gut microbiome is to continue breastfeeding basically as long as you can.
Yeah.
And again, not to shame anyone, we understand that some women are unable to, certain circumstances, you're not able to. But we do know from a scientific perspective that the longer that you do, it's more healthful for outcomes.
Yeah.
And so we built Growing Up prebiotics to support those kiddos that might not be able to get those HMOs, and we say beyond the breastfeeding years. And a lot of times that transition does happen at age 1. And so Growing Up prebiotics is really, at this point, it's like you might be starting to develop your gut from different sources of food, but some kiddos might still just be a little pickier. They may no longer be breastfeeding, and that's really where Growing Up prebiotics helps bridge that gap. And so Growing Up prebiotics is just 2 ingredients. It still has the human milk oligosaccharides. So that really powerful. We call it our hero ingredient.
Yeah.
Plus 3 grams of chicory root fiber. Now, chicory root fiber is very well studied in toddlers and kids. And that's why, again, at Begin Health, we really try to base our everything on the true science, right? What do we know? And chicory root fiber has been studied to help with softer stooling, improving regularity, and most importantly, helping feed and build the bifidobacteria.
That is so great. I've found over the years and raising my own children that toddlers often lose interest in eating and they become a little picky, making it hard to get a well-balanced diet in them, not to mention fiber that they need. But also, I hear moms oftentimes when they are beginning to transition from just breastfeeding or formula feeding to solid foods, a lot of them have problems with their children getting constipated. And I'm not sure if it's just that now they're not maybe bringing in as much fluid and they're, doing more solids. I'm not sure, but I've found that my bread, I don't know if you know what I do I teach people to make their bread from freshly milled flour. Of course, that really helps a lot. And that's a good prebiotic food as well because of the fiber there, but diversity is always good. So I just feel like, making sure that they're getting enough fiber and enough fluid, a great way is with the growing up prebiotics. Is it easy to disguise in food or drink?
Oh, yeah. So our first, this growing up prebiotics was built unflavored. So tasteless, textureless, can go into water, milk, or yogurt. And it's a really great way for families to, again, bridge the gap, especially in fiber where they're not able to get it from food. But I will pause and I will say, so what you do is absolutely transformational to families in teaching them how to make their own breads from, at home.
Yeah, freshly milled flour.
Freshly milled flour. There's nobody that's bigger proponent than me for getting your nutrition from food. That was how we were meant to live.
Yeah.
And that's the best way. Even your prebiotics or probiotics, get them from food. And you want to, get the veggies, fresh fruits. That is a fabulous way to do it. Begin Health really built for the families who really are unable to get their kids to sometimes eat everything we would want them to eat.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's almost like a mini insurance policy, just because these kiddos can be so picky or they do need just a little extra support. And so that's, you absolutely nailed it. When kiddos are transitioning to solid foods, their gut microbes haven't fully developed to be able to digest all of these different fibers that are coming in. And so sometimes they're getting some of that constipation. And we see that very often. And growing up prebiotics was really that help to get their stool more comfortable so that it is easier to pass and that it helps them with getting that moving.
Yeah. And the prebiotics, since it's not the living organisms, it's fiber, it's great. Heat doesn't affect it. So they could mom could, when they're making their pancakes or muffins, they could sprinkle it into theirs right on top, right? So they get it in there.
That's exactly right. And that's what's so fun about the versatility of the prebiotics is that you can put them into a muffin and put them into pancakes, put them into maybe, homemade popsicles. Like there's so many different ways that you can add this extra prebiotic fiber to your kiddos' diets.
Oh, wow. In the summertime, I never thought about a popsicle. Yeah. That is great. That is wonderful. And, just want to pause a second and say we're now carrying these at Bread Becker's. I'll put the link in the podcast so you can go on the website and order it. The Begin Baby comes in individual packets. And I think at first with the newborn, you start with like a half a packet, right?
That's right.
And then increase. And then the growing up prebiotics, we also carry it in the packets, but some families have more than one toddler. And so we have the family jar, that's a little more economical, I guess.
For families that do go for the family jar, this is even though this is built and dosed for the growing up prebiotics were built and dosed for kids, toddlers and kids, parents can still have growing up prebiotics and benefit from them. I put them in my coffee every single morning, and it just helps get things moving just, a little bit more comfortably and regularly. So this can be a family activity as well.
Oh, that is so good to know. That is really good to know. I'm pretty sure a lot of moms and dads and adults are gonna like hearing that. Yeah. So I do want to ask you though, what about children that are already, unfortunately, on stool softeners or chemical laxatives? Can they take growing up prebiotics? Are there any special instructions for them? What do they need to look for? Is it best for them to go on it and then wean off the laxatives, or can they just start adding it?
Yep. So, I'm really glad that we're talking about this because constipation is so pervasive in our society in kids. And a lot of people don't like to talk about it, rightfully so, because you can feel like a failure. It's like I'm doing everything that I can and my kid can't do what it's supposed to be able to do naturally. It can feel very defeating and frustrating. But what I want to say, first of all, is that moms and dads, you are not alone. This is happening at a wide scale, and that is what we are helping families try to combat. And there's so many factors that are going into this. And, yes, doctors have put kids on laxative and stool softeners. They have a place, again, they can be life-saving, right? Where you need to, a kiddo is backed up and they just need to go. The goal is to be able to remove laxatives or stool softeners so you do not have to depend on them long term.
Right.
And that's growing up prebiotics really comes in, is to help families be able to transition away from long-term dependence on laxative by incorporating fiber and prebiotics into their kiddos' diet.
Yeah.
So we deal with this every single day. We've had thousands and thousands of kids get off long-term laxative use using growing up prebiotics. I want to first say growing up prebiotics is not a laxative, right?
No.
So it will not work like a laxative. So do not get discouraged if you start using it on day 1, day 2, day 3, that it's not doing what you want it to do. So growing up prebiotics is really meant to, the studies demonstrate that you want to at least use it consistently for over 6 weeks at the recommended dosage that is able to help start growing those good gut bugs that we talked about earlier, and also helping create that softer stooling, more comfortable stooling so that then it can become more regular and more predictable. If you are on laxatives with your kiddos, we recommend, of course, you got to talk to your doctor. We always want to be very open and honest, right? Especially because some of these stool softeners and laxatives are basically prescribed from pediatricians, is that you do not want to use them in the same serving, right? So you don't want to mix them together.
Okay.
If you're going to use laxative, use the growing up prebiotic maybe at night. If you're going to use the laxative in the morning, start incorporating the fiber at night, or vice versa, right? You just don't want to use them together, and you want to start slowly. So start by small introduction at a different time of day, and then start adding up as your kiddo is starting to tolerate the fiber.
Yeah.
There could be some gas, there could be some bloating at the beginning. That's normal, as again, the shifts are happening. But the goal is over time to be able to slowly reduce the dependence on laxatives and start to incorporate more growing up prebiotics. And that will replace ultimately the laxatives. So as just a fiber nutritional supplement, it is not a laxative.
I was just fixing to stress that point. Just remember, this is not a chemical laxative. You should not see the adverse effects that if you were to overdose on a laxative. It's not that. In fact, it should help. I'm so excited that we found these products. And like I said, I'm going to put a link in the podcast today. The Begin Baby is for newborns to 1 year. Of course, you can go beyond that if you want. the Growing Up prebiotic single serving packets. And for those who have more than one toddler in the house, or even an adult that would like to add this in, we do have the family size jar. So Madeline, I just want to thank you again for, this has been so enlightening, for sharing your great wisdom, your vast knowledge, and your amazing pre and probiotics with us. Is there anything else you would like to share that we didn't cover, before we close and end our time together?
I just want to say, Sue, that, for everyone listening, that this is a monumental time in our country, that we are taking our health back, and we are taking responsibility for ourselves and our families to be healthy, and do it through hard choices, right? You are making your own food. You're growing your own food. You are understanding, reading labels, and being discerning about what is going inside of us and our families. And I just want to give everybody here, just a kudos that you are doing the hard work, because this is what we are meant to be, healthy. And that is what makes us strong as individuals, as families, and as a nation. And I'm just so encouraged by that throughout this time, that we are all collectively working hard to be healthier, because we know that there's a better way, and we do not have to live this way.
Right.
And so I'm really appreciative for the work that you do, and being a thought leader in this space, and for families to really embody this. So it's a really, really exciting time, and I'm very hopeful for our future.
Yes, I am too. And I appreciate that word so much. And I just want to say a special word of encouragement to moms and dads out there. You are raising up the future of our country. And, I always say being healthy is not just about not being sick or not, getting an infection. It's about being strong and a sound mind and happy and joyful and having the energy to do what God created you to do. So I am so excited about this product. I think it's going to help moms and dads raise their children and build a strong foundation from the beginning. And I'm just so excited about it. So thank you so much, Madeline, for sharing today. Man, a wealth of information. And I just want to say to everyone listening, if you found this podcast helpful, which I can't see how you couldn't, how about giving it a 5-star rating and sharing it with someone who may need to hear it? You never know. That mom that you've been thinking of, that God puts on your heart, she may need to hear this. She may be struggling with issues with her little one. So share it, pass it on, and just let's get strong and healthy together. So thank you, Madeline, again. And until next time, everyone listening, this is Sue Becker from Bread Beckers with Sue's Healthy Minutes.
Sue's Healthy Minutes podcast has been a presentation by the Bread Beckers Incorporated, located in Woodstock, Georgia. For more information, store hours, and learning opportunities, visit breadbeckers.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast and never miss an episode. Share this with 2 friends who would benefit from this information, and be sure to join us again next week for more of Sue's Healthy Minutes.